This is New Day Northwest.
Welcome back. Chef J. Kenji Lopez-Alt has stuck around because we had a few more questions for him. Now, Kenji, you recently wrote a story in the New York Times that was all about expiration dates on food.
Right.
So this caught our attention big time because we frequently here in the studio have arguments about this.
Right, okay.
You know, my dear friend Susie believes that cheese can be expired for a month and it's still okay to eat.
Yeah, she's probably right.
She's probably right. I'm not trying to hear that, but you are the expert on this, so I just thought we would go through a couple of them.
Okay.
So I want to get your thoughts first on spices.
So on spices, so the expiration, so first, the first thing to know is that the expiration date is really not an expiration date. The food doesn't magically just go bad that day.
Okay.
Typically what it is, it's a voluntary label that manufacturers put on their food where they're saying the food is likely to be within its best quality around this time.
Gotcha,
you know?
okay.
So spices, they don't really go bad. What does happen with spices is that over time they'll lose their flavor because all those volatile aromatics, every time you smell something, it means that something has gone from that spice, left it, and come to your nose.
Oh.
And so eventually there's nothing left in that spice to smell. And so generally, you know, it depends on storage. So if you store in a cool, dark place, especially if you're using whole spices, they can last maybe a year or so. Pre-ground spices, they're probably going to start losing their flavor around 6 months, but it really depends on storage. So if you open up the container and it smells like nothing, it's going to make your food taste like nothing. So
Okay, that's such a good tip.
First,
that's a good tip. Okay, you got to let go of that cumin you've had for 2 years. Canned and jarred foods.
So canned and jarred foods also typically, so when they're canned and jarred, they're going to be pasteurized inside that container. So the inside of that container, unless there's been some kind of damage to it, should be aseptic.
Okay.
Which means that there's not going to be really much going on in there through its storage process. So it'll be oxygen free, it'll be aseptic.
Oils. Like olive oils.
Right. So with oils, you're not looking for things that, so it's not that they're necessarily going to go bad from, say, bacteria or fungus or molds or things that are going to get you sick. It's more that they're going to go rancid, which means that the fats inside them are going to oxidize.
Okay.
So that happens obviously when they come into contact with air and heat.
Okay.
So with oils, as long as you're storing them in a dark container, so a can, you know, or a dark green bottle, something like that, olive oil comes in, and you keep it in a cool pantry, they should last a while. You know, the sort of the more flavor an oil has, the more particulate stuff it has left over. So like an extra virgin olive oil is going to go rancid faster than a light olive oil that's been filtered. But what you don't want to do is leave your oils like above the stove or sort of behind. You know, people leave their cooking oil right behind the stove,
right on my stove.
Exactly, where it's warm all the time. That's going to make it go rancid faster. So if your oil has a kind of stickiness to it, or if it smells kind of fishy, that's sort of a sign that it's gone rancid, and it's not going to harm you, but it's not going to taste great.
It's not going to taste good. It's going to ruin your food.
It's not going to fry properly either.
We're about out of time, but I just have to ask about eggs.
Right. So eggs. So eggs are one of those things that actually last a very, very long. And you know, everybody says, I know, you know, it smells like rotten eggs, but most people I think have not actually smelled what rotten eggs smell like.
Yeah, that's
because it's
true.
very rare that you get rotten eggs. So eggs can be packaged up to 30 days after they're laid, and then the date on the package is generally another 30 days after that. So that's kind of like 2 months already built in.
Wow.
And in fact, eggs will last significantly longer than that. They could last, you know, a month or two even longer than that. With eggs, if you want to check for freshness, obviously the best thing to do is break them into a bowl separately and smell them. They're probably going to be fine. You can also use the water trick where you put them into a cup of water, and as eggs age, the airspace in them gets bigger. So eventually they'll start to float in water. So if they're floating, that's a sign that not necessarily that they're bad, but they're
past their prime.
Yeah, past their prime, exactly.
Oh my gosh, this has been invaluable information. I know everyone out there is so grateful and being like, oh wow. So we really appreciate you. Please come back anytime.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.